Reddit. What made you quit a job on the spot? Nothing dramatic. After working my ass off during the pandemic and promised an additional bonus, I received a low performance review conveniently timed a day before my bonus was to be paid. The low performance feedback cancelled my bonus. Given all the other bullshit I was putting up with, I broke and quit. I had a nice month off and my new job pays significantly more. Never work for people that don't appreciate you, there are always others that will. I used to cut grass in a cemetery. I used a push lawnmower and had to lift it up onto the elevated graves, and then back down and onto the next one. Over and over and over. Minimum wage was $4.25 an hour. After an hour of cutting grass in the August heat, I sit down for my break, and this guy named Leroy asks, "Was that worth $4.25 to you?" I quit the next day. Thanks, Leroy. Was Leroy a ghost? Asked for a raise and was told okay. Next morning, Friday, I was told by the same person who agreed with the raise that I should put a few more years in and then we'll talk again. Locked my toolbox at the end of the day and called a tow truck to pick it up. Shop manager was shocked that next Monday to find an empty spot where my tools were and couldn't understand why I left. You are braver than me. I was told I'd get a raise and stuck around waiting for it for 6 months before finally jumping ship. This was after 4 years of my career with no change in pay whatsoever and consistent, good quality work. Now I advocate for myself. My grandfather, who I considered like a father, passed away after a long stay in hospital. We were closer than he was with his own kids, and our bond was quite special. I spoke to my manager about getting the day of his funeral off, since I was organizing part of the arrangements, and having a day or two of bereavement leave, and he agreed. The day of the funeral finally comes and the staff start calling me, leaving me messages asking why I'm not at my shift, and telling me, while I'm in a suit hosting family members at the funeral home, that I have to find someone to replace me or face repercussions. Needless to say, I told them to figure it out, and never looked back. This happened to my wife. She was at work when her mom called to say my wife's grandma had died. My wife, sobbing, told her manager that she needed to go home. The manager said, "If you leave now, don't bother coming back." My wife took off her work apron, handed it to the manager, and said, "I'll come by for my final paycheck." The manager had the nerve to call and pester her at home, "So you're not covering your shift tomorrow?" "No, Frank." Edit, this was a summer job when she was in college way back when. I'm proud of how assertive she is. Walked into the interview, everything went well, accepted the job offer. Went to the front desk to do the paperwork and noticed that the contract had a different pay amount, and that I would be interning for the first month for $100/week. I asked first about the amount difference, was told, "Oh, this the standard contract, it just hasn't been updated for your specific offer." I told them they'd need to edit and initial the changes before I would sign. "Oh, that's not how things work here." I thanked them for their time and left without signing anything. They called me back on the day I was supposed to have started asking where I was. I told them because didn't sign the contract, I was never an employee. Oh boy, that was a fun call. Similar situation for me. Back in 2012 I was looking for a job in anything other than food but got desperate. This burger place had just opened up and was desperate for workers. They advertised on their window $11.75 an hour starting for all positions. I applied, had an interview basically the second I turned in my application and got hired 20 minutes later. At the end of my shift, which was about 3 hours, they said they would start me at minimum wage, because you haven't finished your bachelor's degree yet. I was speechless. If I had finished my bachelor's degree, why would I be working here? And for such low pay. I told them to cash out my pay immediately and I would not be returning because of their deceit. There weren't any stipulations anywhere on the sign that said anything about needing an undergrad degree for that much pay. They cashed me out at $11.25 per hour and I left. They closed down back in 2018 and every year Spirit Halloween takes over the location. Fuck 'em. Worked for a privately owned bakery for exactly 1 week. The owner's son comes in, walks past the counter and into the bathroom. He comes out a few minutes later without acknowledging me or my co-worker, gets into his car and drives away. We both looked at each other, then opened the door only to find this guy literally shit all over the toilet seat and the toilet paper holder. I called the owner, told her what happened and she said to deal with it. So I asked my co-worker if she wanted to clean it up because I wasn't going to. She declined and I told her I was walking out. She did as well. We locked up the store and told the owner we quit but would reconsider staying if her son came back to clean up his own mess. She yelled and berated us for 20 seconds before I said goodbye and hung up. Jesus Christ. That family must have some crazy mental issues. Not me, but a middle-aged tradesman where I work. I work underground and it isn't for everybody, terrible environment and whatnot. This particular individual starting working and after a few weeks decided that it wasn't for him. Bad conditions and hostile supervisor. He approached the boss at the morning meeting and told him that he wasn't going underground and that he was quitting. The boss told him that he had to give him 2 weeks notice and without missing a beat the guy replied, "For the next 2 weeks you're gonna notice that I'm not here," turned around, packed his shit and left. Was never heard from again. Man, that's a great line. I'll have to remember that. I worked for T-Mobile store, authorized reseller, not an actual dealer. 1 week, I had an amazing week, sold 55 phones, brand new activations on a business account with 55 high-end phones at that time. When I got my next check, they said my paperwork was not in order and thus they couldn't pay me. As a side note, they always told us to make copies of all paperwork in case this happened so you can show it to the manager and get it resolved within a day. I went over my backup paperwork with my boss. He said everything looked to be in order and he would have the office cut me a check. I went to the office, and they told me it was still not in order. I immediately gave them my store key and quit on the spot. I did go through collections and they did settle before I took them to court. The company did go out of business after a few years because they tried that with many other employees and eventually lead to an investigation by the government, according to an old co-worker I bumped into years later. Worked as a cashier in a local shop. One night 2 guys came at me with knives trying to get in the till. I just walked away and said have at it, as it wasn't worth the minimum wage to get into it with a couple of guys waving knives at me. After they ran out the store, I picked up my mobile and called the police, then called the store manager. The next day, the district manager meets me as I turn up for my shift the very next day. Her first words were, "It was very unprofessional of me to be on my phone while in work." I laughed at her and told her she could take this as my notice and walked out. I never had a problem with being held up, but the sheer gall of that got me. I worked at McDonald's when I was 16. We used to get a free McDouble or hot and spicy with a small fries and drink for our lunch break. One day when I went on break, the franchise owner was there, and when he noticed I asked for cheese on the hot and spicy, he attempted to make me pay for the whole meal because cheese wasn't free. I thought he was joking, so I laughed and started walking towards the break room until he yelled at me not to walk away from him in front of customers and my co-workers. I couldn't believe it. This grown-ass successful businessman was hounding a 16-year-old for a slice of cheese. Told him I wasn't gonna pay, put the food down and walked out. They tried calling me to come to work that weekend. I told them no thanks and never went back. That's crazy. Cheap ass guys. I worked at McDonald's when I was 18, and we could eat anything we wanted. I'd make quesadillas in the kitchen, and the mangers would ask for some too lol. Thank you for watching/hearing. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more forum videos. You may even click the bell. Leave a comment if you want to, and click the next video to get to another video.